This is for Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. Wish I could take your tears and replace them with laughter. Long live Palestine, long live Gaza. Palestine, Ramallah, West Bank, Gaza. This is for the child that is searching for an answer. Wish I could take your tears and replace them with laughter. Long live Palestine. While we listen to tunes made by ignorant fools, Israel.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English-language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning. Friends, what an amazing week. First, I want to thank all of our friends who attended Invasion Day last week. Of all the rallies I've been to, it was by far the biggest and best, and I reckon over 100,000 people. So congratulations to the organisers, and we look forward to 500,000 people next year. It's been a big week in Palestine. We've just found another opportunity for everything to be given away for Palestinians by another racist white person, but we'll go through it all. And I think it's important that we don't give too much oxygen to this deal of the century. That being said, I've done a bit of work and went through the 181 pages of bile, and I've dissected the thing, and I think it's important that whilst we don't give it any air, we do discuss the main points. And it's important to realise just how racist the document is, and it starts out really early in documents. It says, while the Palestinians have never had a state, this is settler colonialism 101, Aboriginals never had a country, terra nullius, etc. Settlers and occupiers, they need validation to legitimise their theft. They've got to justify their ethnic cleansing, massacres, denials of rights. So you go out early with, they never had a state. And the problem with this colonialist mindset is it's predicated on that a host and a parasite, if you will. It's not rooted in land. And Palestinians know exactly who they are and where they come from. They've got strong identities. And their identity is rooted to their culture, to their family stories, to the dirt, exactly like our Indigenous brothers and sisters here and all over the world. And if you meet a Palestinian, ask them where they're from, they'll describe to you the city, the olive groves, the churches, the mosques, and they'll tell you the story, the narrative of their lifetime. And Palestine is in all of us, all Palestinians. Now, whether that's me, a Palestinian born in diaspora, my children, my father who was a Nakba refugee, it's in all of us, and it's an inalienable in all of us that is our right of return, but also who we are. And I'm just cutting a bit out of it. My dear friend Michaela again, the late Patrick Wolf, a dear friend of Palestine, a wonderful human being, and a quote that he said to Michaela was, "I've never met a Palestinian who didn't want to be one." Now, let's go to the reality. No amount of violence, 72 years of dispossession, has been able to dislodge our identity and who we are. In fact, with every atrocity and every denial of our rights, our identity strengthens. We become more and more Palestinian the more and more they reject us. And, the American and the Israelis have been trying to extinguish us. It's never going to happen. To be clear, this thing doesn't pave a way to peace. What it is an imposed Israeli victory. And we look at the timing of the announcement. It's on the same day that Netanyahu is indicted on criminal investigations in Israel. The Trump impeachment trial is ongoing in Congress. We've got elections, both of these guys going for elections this year. Netanyahu for the third time in under a year. Trump trying to get re-elected this year in November, this year in the United States. They're pandering to their base, the evangelical Christian right wing in the United States, and BB2 is settler people that he needs to settler members of the Knesset that he needs it to band into his coalition. The plan is so absurd in everything that it doesn't do. It doesn't address a single Palestinian right. And the Israelis immediately accept that, this is a basis for negotiations. But now, I would think planned, they knew that the Palestinians would reject it, and this would be an opportunity for them to cast us in mainstream media as rejectionists, and, we're the obstacle to peace, and then frame this in that war on terrorism debate, so we can continue to kill brown people wherever they might be in the interests of peace, because Israelis are just like us. And most Jews in Israel are going to be happy with it because it does nothing for them. Their privileges aren't jeopardised or diminished. They don't need to curtail their speech. Everything still works normally for them. They can travel across borders, and they can live under civilian rule. They're welcomed at international conferences. They can sell their armaments, under the banner of battle-tested, occupation-enhancing technology. So, the despots around the world in Hungary and Brazil, they'll be looking forward to buying this stuff. Meanwhile, the Palestinians, whether they're 48ers inside Israel or residents of Jerusalem, residents within the West Bank, or refugees in the West Bank, or the most despised Palestinians, those of Gaza, get none of these luxuries. And I'll go through the plan in a minute, but interestingly, as bad as the plan is for Palestinians, there are Zionists who think it's bad too. And they think it's bad because it even accommodates any concept of Palestine or Palestinians. And a quote from a group called Women in Green. Some of the stuff is just crazy, the commentary under these posts. But the comment is, the land of Israel is the sole homeland of the Jewish people, and no Palestinians will ever be allowed to live freely on this territory. Sadly, look, we've often talked about Palestinians being political footballs for the Arab world. One would imagine that the fix is in. We had a number of Arab ambassadors attend the love fest that was the press conference with Trump and Netanyahu. Many Arab leaders might reject the plan publicly, but increasingly Arabs of the Gulf and Egypt are keen to embrace Israel with their ideological war against Iran. The European Union's divided and increasingly becoming filled with pro-Israel governments. So we can expect something perhaps from Hungary, but then you get full backing from Hungary. From Belgium might be critical, but we get full backing from Orban in Hungary. Boris Johnson's already in. Couple of bullets from the plan. Israel grows to 85% of historic Palestine from 78%. The US recognises the annexation of almost all of the occupied West Bank, including the Jordan Valley, and all of the Jewish-only settlements that are built on stolen land in violation of international law. All of Jerusalem becomes part of Israel. Palestinian refugees don't get to go back. They're denied their internationally recognised right. The Palestinians, if they want a state, it's a Swiss cheese state. I heard somebody quote as Swiss cheese. The Israelis get the cheese and we get all the holes. The Palestinians get the holes. Those cantons, Bantustans, are surrounded by Israeli border posts, control points, roads. And if the Palestinians don't accept it in 4 years from today, there'll be no Palestinian state. Now, all of those are on top of the past 3 years of what Trump's done for Netanyahu and that right-wing fascist government that exists there now. This is on top of recognising Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, Syrian territory. This is recognising Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel and moving the embassy there. This is cutting aid to Palestinians by defunding UNRWA and undermining refugee rights. This is reversing the US policy of that settlements are illegal, closing the Palestinian embassy in Washington, D.C., and recently Trump signed an executive order in the guise of fighting anti-Semitism, which really is about targeting Palestinians on campus. A couple of key quotes, and I'll read these to you because it's so important to just realise just how far this document goes. Though the state of Palestine will include Gaza, security challenges make the building of a port problematic for the foreseeable future. A Palestinian state without permission to build a port. It says, the state of Israel will retain sovereignty over territorial waters which are vital to Israel's security and which provide stability to the region. I.e., Palestinians won't be able to go into their own territorial waters, won't be able to mine for gas, fish, whatever it might be, won't have access to the outside world. The state of Israel will continue to maintain control over the airspace and electromagnetic spectrum west of the Jordan River. So no airspace, so we can't have an airport, no air force, if you will, even if we had enough land for a runway. And they get to control the electromagnetic spectrum, so no internet, no broadband, 3G, 4G, 5G. Interestingly, and something that hasn't been picked up by the mainstream media, there are, as we know, many Palestinian citizens, Palestinians who remained during the Nakba within 48 Palestine or Israel. And there's many Palestinians that live quite close to the 49 armistice line, which the green line, which delineates Israel proper, if you will, from the 48, from the West Bank. And these communities have been called the triangle communities. It consists of a number of Palestinian suburbs and cities, something of the order of 300,000 Israeli citizens who are Palestinian. So these triangle communities are deemed to be, ultimately will be retained by Israel for military reasons. The vision contemplates the possibility, subject to agreement of the parties, that the border of Israel will be redrawn such that the triangle communities become part of the state of Palestine. In this agreement, the civil rights of the residents of the triangle communities would be subject to the applicable laws and judicial rulings of the relevant authorities. So we're going to excise, cut off a tumour, if you will, demographically engineer a Jewish majority by cutting off 300,000 Palestinians out of Israel, people who will be voting in the March elections. Whenever this state of Palestine, Swiss cheese state is created, we're going to move 300,000 of them into Palestine and out of Israel. All goods and persons will cross the borders into the state of Palestine through regulated border crossings, which will be monitored by the state of Israel. In addition to the overriding security responsibility over the state of Palestine, the state of Israel will be responsible for security at all international crossings into the state of Palestine. So exactly like today, it's a prison. Come in and out through the warden. We'll check what can go in. We'll say who can go in, what can come out, who can go out, what time, etc., etc., etc. Sounds like a pretty good state to me. Although each party will be in charge of setting zoning rules and issuing building permits in their own countries, zoning and planning of the state of Palestine in the areas adjacent to the borders between the state of Israel and the state of Palestine, including without limitation the border between Jerusalem and Al-Quds, will be subject to the state of Israel's overriding security responsibility. What this means is even after annexing huge chunks of the West Bank, it'll then set a limit on how far from the borders Palestinians can build, how big they can build, what they can build, everything, all under the premise of security concerns. Now, I mentioned Al-Quds before. The plan calls or allows for a Palestinian capital to be built in one of the far distant suburbs of Jerusalem called Abu Dis. Abu Dis is on the other side of the apartheid wall, so not within the engineered boundaries of Greater Jerusalem that Israel's created. So it's a majority Palestinian, it's a 100% Palestinian city suburb within Jerusalem's proper city limits. the Palestinian capital can be there. It's not allowed to be called Jerusalem. It can only be called Al-Quds. The Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement shall provide for a complete end and release of any and all claims relating to refugee or immigration status. There shall be no right of return by or absorption of any Palestinian refugee into the State of Israel. The State of Israel was admitted into the United Nations, and that admission was predicated on UN Resolution 194, which called for the immediate repatriation of all refugees and or compensation for those that didn't want to return. Here we are 72 years later, where we're being asked to sign away the rights of 6 million Palestinians and of all their future generations. A realistic and just solution means that Palestinians go back to Palestine. That's what fair is. Depressing as the plan is, there's a little nugget in here that makes, gives us I think a little bit something to be look forward to. The PLO and the Palestinian Authority shall refrain from any attempt to join any international organisation without the consent of the State of Israel, take no action, and shall dismiss all pending actions against the State of Israel, the United States, and any of their citizens before the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, and all other tribunals. It shall take no action against any Israeli or United States citizen before Interpol or any non-Israeli or United States, as applicable, legal systems. And this reveals something that's very telling. Israel is genuinely scared of such a move. Aside from the reality of it being an illegitimate state founded on the dispossession of another, they fear the application of international law. And so there's great opportunities for the Palestinians to continue, the leadership to continue with their International Criminal Court of Justice applications there, and to take Israel to every court we can and every leader we can to the Hague, etc. Now, we shouldn't be surprised really with this plan. I mean, Trump's been a long friend of Netanyahu. Trump's familial ties with the Kushners and Jared, his son-in-law. Through the plan's orders, Special Envoy Jason Greenblatt, U.S. Ambassador to Tel Aviv David Friedman, and Kushner himself, they're all massive, significant personal and financial supporters of the settlement enterprise. I had a laugh. I was watching CNN, just to see what the rest of the media says. And I can't remember the reporter's name, but she asked Kushner what made him an expert, 39 years old, a real estate mogul, a son of a real estate developer whose father's in jail for all sorts of nefarious things. What made him an expert? And Jared Kushner said he'd read 25 books. 25 books on the issue. We're talking about 12 million Palestinians who read 25 books. I reckon if he read 25 books, I still wouldn't let him anywhere near my car, let alone, do something as important as negotiate a just peace. It wouldn't be complete without us working out how we got here. And the Oslo Peace Accords was signed in 1993, and we all had such optimism. And I say all, Palestinians in the diaspora, and certainly Palestinians on the ground, who said, this could be it. There were a few that said, no, this is not. And one of those was a Palestinian scholar, the late Edward Said. And he dubbed the Accords the Palestinian Versailles. And he said that this would undermine our liberation struggle and any hope for a future Palestinian sovereignty. And he was so right. So what we've had since 93, where we had the Oslo Peace Accords, and we'll talk about areas A, B and C in a second, but from 1993, 1998, the evil butcher, the bloodthirsty, thankfully dead dog of a human, Ariel Sharon, the butcher of Sabra and Shatila, said, we'll make a pastrami sandwich of them. We'll insert a strip of Jewish settlements in between the Palestinians and then another strip of Jewish settlements right across the West Bank, so that in 25 years' time, and he said this in 1998, So he was only 22 years. He wasn't far off with his 25 years. So that in 25 years' time, neither the United Nations nor the United States, nobody will be able to tear it apart. Everybody has to move, run, and grab as many hilltops as they can to enlarge the settlements, because everything we take now will stay ours. Everything we don't grab will go to them. Sharon and Said were both right. The division of the West Bank in Oslo created areas A, B, and C. And the latter two areas, B and C, became under limited Palestinian autonomy. And what it facilitated was the Bantuization of the West Bank and isolated Gaza. We've known forever that the US has been biased towards Israel, but the Trump and Kushner deal, this thing is taking it to a new level. The US policy today is now completely in line with the most far-right racist government Israel's ever produced. And increasingly we're finding it very hard for us to even contemplate. I've known forever that they're not an honest interlocutor, but it's sickening to how low they've stooped. There's no mention in Trump's plan of Palestinian rights. Instead, what we get offered is $50 billion in economic incentives over the next 10 years. This bribe is in exchange for our internationally enshrined rights. And I mean, if they haven't learnt anything yet, they've got to know that Palestinians aren't going to be bribed. And we're not going to take Jerusalem off the table. We're not going to take our villages and our towns and our rights for equality off the table. Palestinians will return. Palestine will be free, and it will be free when we apply international law and justice. There can be no peace without justice. When you take this peace plan from the situation we have in the context of Palestine and Israel, and you say, okay, what does it actually mean from the point of view internationally in a global perspective? What Trump's done here is said, don't worry about the international legal system. Don't worry about international law. Don't worry about, what we're supposed to have learned from World War II about the inadmissibility of territory by force. We've created a system now. Trump's saying it's okay. The system is that might is right. If you're big enough and strong enough and have enough power, you can do what you want, when you want, how you want. What does that mean? Well, it means the Rohingyas are never going to get justice, because in that power dynamic between Myanmar and their just struggle to return to their lands, that's not going to happen for them. Crimea, you're in trouble. Russia's grabbed you. West Papua, the indigenous peoples of Australia, South America, North America, and all these just struggles around the world. Might is right, according to Donald Trump. We've passed that plan. We had the standing ovations, number of standing ovations from a sycophantic crowd. I mean, not a Palestinian president. I mean, imagine having a peace plan where one of the people that's supposed to be involved in it isn't actually there. I mean, a lot of people who've been divorced would like to get divorced that way, I'd reckon. I'm getting divorced and here's the plan. Well, it probably actually happens in some of the West. What hasn't changed? Here's what hasn't changed within historic Palestine. There's 14 million people there. Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, Israel, 48. There's 14 million people there, living between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. Half of them are Palestinian. Now, we're going to call them Palestinian, but one of the things that we struggle with as a cause, we know it's apartheid. We know that there's two laws for two people. And in South Africa, it was very, very clear. And the pictures were very stark. Like the South of America, no coloreds allowed. In apartheid South Africa, it was if you were black or colored, and if you're white. It was binary. Well, it's binary. It is binary in Israel. You either celebrate God on Saturday or you do not. If you do not celebrate God on Saturday, there's a whole set of other things you have to deal with. If you do celebrate God on Saturday, we've got special rules for you. You're one of the chosen special people within this fantastic racist state. The half of that population, the 7 million people who do not celebrate God on Saturday, whether they be in Gaza, in Jerusalem, in 48 Palestine, Israel, or in the West Bank, have little or no political rights. Every one of those people within those 14 million people is under the rule of the same government. They use the same currency. The same entity determines the electromagnetic spectrum and the speed of the internet, determines who can come in, who can come out, what can come in, what can come out. The birth registry, the death registry, the population controls. One entity controls all of that for 14 million people, but only half of that population gets to vote and to determine who controls their lives. Now, that's Apartheid 101. Here's the reality. Lasting peace requires justice. And it requires valuing Palestinian lives as much and equally as Jewish lives. It means allowing Palestinians to exercise their rights, including their right to movement, to freedom of religious practice, to move in and out of their homes, to self-determination. And it has to be rooted in international law and justice for all. Not what extremist Israeli leaders say, not what evangelical Christian preachers in the United States say. And just on that, the evangelical, this is one of the craziest partnerships of all times. We've got Jews who believe in the Torah and the coming of the Messiah, and you've got evangelical Christians who believe that we need to herd all of this is biblical prophecy. We've got to get all the Jews into Israel, all of them into there, because the sooner they're there, then the King of Kings will come, Armageddon, all those Jews will die, and Christ will save us all. They're on the same side. The Christian evangelicals that are calling for a Holocaust, the ultimate Holocaust of all Jews, so that the second coming can happen, and the Zionists who want to cleanse Palestine of all of its indigenous people, they're on the same side. It's time now for the international community to finally and at long last acknowledge the reality of apartheid and hold this racist country to account. It's time for boycott, divestments and sanctions, and to hold all Israeli leaders accountable for decades of grave, systematic abuses of Palestinian rights. Free Palestine. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to joining you again next week.